To learn what's going on in the legal world behind the top stories, John standing by with today's sidebar.
Yeah, if only we had two guys here in studio that could help us sort all this out. We've got Dan and Chuck from Rio and Caraway. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
I want to start with, these Takata airbags. We've been hearing about this for a decade now. Basically, they've been proven to malfunction or be faulty over time, but there are still millions of them out there at this point. People haven't taken them in for the recall. I'm curious, at what point, or is there a point where the manufacturer says, hey, you've been notified 50 times about the recall, it's now on you to have done something about it?
So this is always a difficulty with recalls, is because you wish it was that simple. I mean, if I simply bought it from, X dealership and they had the same address forever and they could reach me, but that's not the reality. I mean, look at what happened during COVID with people moving all over the place. Did they reach out to their dealers to make sure they had that information?
Yeah.
Or, vehicle sales person to person afterwards? Do they pass on that information? So the hard part is, one, it's the dissemination of the information, and then what is the likely result? The difficulty you've got here is there were, I think it was 19 manufacturers, over 40 million vehicles originally that were notified. The difficulty being is that because there were so few replacements available at the time, they purposely knew they couldn't replace them all. So there were 9 states identified as hot target, high-risk states, because they had high heat waves.
Yeah, which
Sacramento
contributed to them malfunction.
So that's the malfunction, is when there's high heat, the chemicals malfunction, and essentially you get it where it blasts too forcefully and shoots the material like shrapnel into the people. Over 25 people, they believe, have died, over 400 injured now so far, so it's a known phenomenon. The difficulty is you've got places like Sacramento where they believe there's still over 100,000 of these vehicles on the road. So, and it's a huge spread. It's like 2001 to 2014 or 15 in terms of these models that have this out there. So if you fall within that range, you can still take it back to the dealerships. They will replace it for you. Some of them even have a no drive order where you can stop where you are. They will tow it away and go deal with it.
Interesting. Another story we had this week was a video goes viral. A woman says she took her dog to swim on one of the beaches in Tahoe and that it died shortly after. She claimed there was a toxic algae. Just today we find out tests show there was no algae in the water at those beaches.
Yeah, so the difficulty, again, we have a naturally occurring algae bloom that only when it's in high concentration, in heat, you couldn't be to the point that if pets or people consume it, does it have toxic properties? It does occur. People in the Tahoe area have been interviewed. They see it. This is a thing that happens. So they're out testing for it often. It was not found in Lake Tahoe itself so far, but it was found in a neighboring pond. So it's not as if this isn't a concern. It's just something that people need to be aware of.
But who's held liable for algae in a pond?
See, that's the difficulty is in something that occurs naturally, no one. This is a risk that you have to be aware of and you have to be mindful of. There is some discussion that potentially this is something that is occurring more and more because of factors like runoff and heat waves and maybe even the wildfires, but it's so remote in understanding why we're having more of it right now. I don't think there's any liability you can attach at the moment.
Yeah, again, who do you blame for that? Another story we saw this week was the Biden administration putting a rule into effect that basically requires airlines to give refunds faster when your flight's canceled, things like that. I would imagine this is not something the airlines like, but do they have any legal recourse?
This is something I'm really excited about. I think anybody that's traveled in the last 4 years, objectively, without being disparaging, would know that flying has gotten progressively worse and worse with canceled flights and things of that nature. What typically happens is when a flight gets canceled, you have to get on the phone, you have to go through the phone tree, and it's a minimum of 2 hours just to get a hold of somebody. And most of the time, it's almost impossible to get a refund. So what's happened is they've passed a law, and they've said 3 hours, your flight is delayed, you get an automatic refund. And what that means is you don't have to call anybody. They have to automatically refund you your money, and I believe it's within 20 days. There's different time frames. This is domestic. I think it goes up to 5 or 6 hours for a delay. But you also get an automatic refund for if you pay for Wi-Fi or something like that and they don't provide it to you, or if they lose your bag and they're not able to get it back to you within 12 hours. And again, it's automatic. Something else that's happening is that they've met with everybody and all of the different airlines, and they've said, now we got to start working on some of these other problems, like if you're a parent and you're flying, you get to fly and sit next to your child. So 4 airlines have said that they were going to agree to that, but now they're going to start passing legislation, a law that's going to make it so that that happens. So a lot of good things are happening with regards to flights.
So if the airlines have an issue, basically sue the government and see where it goes. Speaking of the airlines, though, interesting story this week too. Salt and Pepper,
Yep.
The rap group, Peppa from the group, taken off a flight in Las Vegas. Give us the details there, and is there a legal recourse for it?
So this is something that you've seen a lot come up in the media. I believe that there was a football player, the same thing happened
Terrell
to.
Davis.
Exactly, very recently. So in her case, she had an injured leg. She was wearing a cast. She gets on the flight. She's paid for 2 seats. The airlines initially said, well, because you're not wearing a cast and you only have this brace, we're not going to honor your 2 seats, and they tried to give up her seat. She shows them the brace. They eventually say, that's fine. A gentleman then gets on the plane and says, I would like your seat. I have to go to a funeral. She asks him, just tell me, swear to me that you're actually going to a funeral. He refuses. There's like a kerfuffle. Everybody's arguing. The airline's saying that she pulls out her phone and starts recording. She's saying she didn't do that. As a result of that, the airline takes her off of the plane. Now, her recourse in that situation would be to get a full refund for her flight. They've provided that to her. So really, she doesn't have recourse there. But what she's saying is that she's paid for these other services when she lands, a greeter and a transportation company. And I believe that was approximately $800 that she hasn't been refunded. And the question is legally if she's entitled to that. And in all honesty, right now, with the way that the laws are, you really can't go after that type of thing with the airlines.
Interesting. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. We appreciate your expertise, and keep that in mind next time you fly. Thank you so much, guys.